All right. Welcome to another Power Launch. Today with Jye Sandiford. Jye, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Mark. It's good to be here. Hope you're doing well.
Yeah, doing well, thanks. I hope you're doing well too. Because yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
today is an exciting day. Excited to have you on the show. Jay from POAP, Head of Enterprise. POAP is a pioneer when it comes to digital collectibles. They coined the term proof of attendance protocol. And today we're going to explore what you do in the enterprise business. So excited to have you here on the show. And thanks everyone for tuning in. You can ask questions later in the show, about 30 minutes in. The whole show is will take about 40 minutes. And then, as a little surprise, we'll also drop
Mhm.
a POAP at one point in the show. So make sure that you are tuned in. And at some point, we'll drop a QR code and you can claim an exclusive POAP. So excited for that as well.
Great.
All right. So let's jump in. Jay,
Let's do it.
yeah. First question. You've been driving POP's enterprise strategy. What's the thesis behind bringing NFT based proof of attendance protocol to corporate clients?
Yeah, sure. I'd say, a number of years ago now, 3 or 4 years ago, we started to see some organic interest from corporate clients in wanting to use POAP. You know, at this point, I'd say NFTs were, quite a hype, and looking at including those in brand activations and testing out the technology was something of interest. And POAP was, one of the best in class solutions at the time, and we've evolved that today. So it just made a lot of sense when we saw this organic interest coming through. They obviously wanted a little bit more high touch support because there's a big brand who's doing an activation, and so we saw, okay, well, let's create some managed services. It can form a key part of like the commercial pillar that we have today, whilst also working with them to test new technology and helping us increase our brand value. So yeah, I guess that's where the thesis sits.
Mhm. And for our listeners who've never heard of POAP, can we take a
Mm.
step back and explain what is proof of attendance protocol and why are people using that?
Sure. So proof of attendance protocol is like a curated ecosystem of memories on the blockchain. And POAPs, as a single unit, is like a token or an asset on the chain that we use to capture these, significant moments in time. So proof of attendance, as the name suggests, proof of contributing, recognizing contribution within communities or organizations. These are the types of things that we try and capture. So if you think about things like certificates you've got from work, ticket stubs from like a music concert that you went to 10 years ago, we're looking at replacing those in a digital way that you own forever.
Mhm. And I can assure you, if you are part and you've been part of the Web3 space for a while, you know about POAP because POAP is everywhere. Literally at every Web3 crypto event, you will see POAPs and people collecting memories. And now you're taking that outside of the Web3 space. So I'm curious to know if you are talking to corporates who may have never
Mhm.
heard about POPs and NFTs, proof of attendance. What is your
Yeah.
pitch for them?
So yeah, I think it really depends on their objectives. POAP's been used in a number of ways, extending from simple collectibles or mementos for attending events, particularly in-person events. We've seen them used, all the way through to like a community engagement tool or a gamification tool. So we have like a broad range of use cases that come to us, and I'm sure we'll cover some of those as we go through this discussion. But yeah, at this stage, I think we're being quite reactive to what we're seeing in the market, the different needs, where it comes to how do we create a token that captures a significant experience or moment. And yeah, that's kind of where it looks at, digital experience and making it fun.
Mhm. You talked about use cases. What are some of the use cases enterprises are most keen on?
Yeah, that's definitely evolved over time. So I'd say, a number of years ago, linking back to when there was a lot of hype around NFTs, similar to what we see with AI today, um, using an NFT or a POAP in this case in an activation potentially meant that you might have been able to get some significant, media attention, which is always great for the brand. And so I think we saw a lot of use cases connected to brand activations to test out the technology, but also to help build the brand and get some media. Today, we're seeing a lot more use cases that come to testing different initiatives around building communities. Understanding and collaborating with their consumer base on developing new products, and using POPs as a way to capture those who are engaging in that kind of initiative. And then the last one we're seeing is more internally focused. So how POPs are being used for employee engagement, which again has a number of use cases from strictly speaking engaging employees, all the way through to there's a longer term plan here. We love what blockchain can do for the business, but to get more people bought in, we need to show them in like a low risk way that there's a lot of really nice digital experiences we can create with the technology, and that's where Poet comes into play. So I think they're kind of a broad range of some of the use cases we're seeing.
Mm. So lots of different use cases. I
Yeah.
would love to go a bit deeper, and maybe you have a project, a company you worked with, where you think that's something that really like showcases what you can do with POAP and made a difference at the end of the day. Uh, of- yeah.
Yeah, yes, certainly. So I actually did a post earlier today on LinkedIn about World of Women. So this is a Web3 blockchain native organization that's around empowering women and bringing people together to celebrate and connect. And they've been using POAP for some time. In what I would say is like a really perfect example. So their use of POAP connects. I think across maybe 11 different channels or 11 different use cases. So think about any initiatives or touch points that you have with your brand and the users, whether that's online or in person. They're using POAPs as a data source to capture that. And what's really nice about how they're using it is, we are trying to build this, curated ecosystem of memories. And so they're really focusing on, the fabric of the community, not just being about one individual connecting to the brand, but how individuals within the community connect with each other as well, and really building those like genuine relationships, which strengthens the overall brand, right? Um, so I love that they've been not only using Pops for a range of channels, offline and online, and now they've got this interesting data source. But they're now being able to leverage that data to help people connect online. So they have a community platform. You can search for POPs that you've collected. You can show them off on your profile, and then you can connect with other people who might have been at the same event earlier this year in Paris, or people who were on a community call today. Perhaps you want to go and connect with someone, but you didn't quite capture their name when you met them. So there's a lot of really nice use cases where it starts to become like a social recommendation feature.
Mhm. You just mentioned data, and when I hear POAP,
Mhm.
on one side, I think about the user, and for the user, it's an engagement tool. It's nice to collect memories and
Yeah.
showcase, hey, I've been there and I've done that, and I'm part of that community. On the other side, I think about, wow, this is also a huge data opportunity.
Mhm.
Um, for brands and corporates and communities who distribute those POAPs.
Yeah.
What are some data points those brands collect for those specific use cases? Can you make us a couple of examples?
Yeah, sure. So with each use of a POAP, which you'll hopefully see later, you're collecting an address. That's either an Ethereum address for on-chain collecting, or we also offer like an email address where you can just reserve those to be put on chain at a later stage, but you still get that, digital collectible. And so what we do work with enterprise clients, sometimes they may want to, get feedback from an event or from a community call. And so you might add some additional data, fields into a landing page before collecting. And so we see that sometimes for some, development of a CRM or for, marketing qualified leads, perhaps. But I think what's most interesting with the data, if we take a step back, is there's loads of data today, right? I think I read something the other day that there's more images that have been created this year than in the last 150 years. So we're not short on data, and we don't need to add more data. But what's going to be really interesting as we move forward and we evolve with AI technologies is how we find quality data. And I think that's where POAP really comes into play. Is the data we're collecting, we're working really hard with you on making sure that it's super accurate. And I think that's going to be incredibly valuable to corporates and enterprise as we move forwards, and that's kind of the benefits I think we can provide on the data front there.
Mhm. I would like to dive a little bit deeper into the buyer case. That
Yeah.
was one of your clients. Can you run us through the numbers a little bit? What did you do there, and how did it affect employee engagement?
Yeah, certainly. So Bayer Pharmaceuticals is certainly a champion of POAP. They've been using POAP for quite a period of time now. And what started with, I believe, an initial look into how the company can be innovative and use blockchain has now turned into them creating over 1,000 different POAPs. So what do those use cases look like? Connecting with executives in the company at an office, end of year event. It could be for university students who are coming and doing internships. It could be for meeting consultants out in the field with their sales and commercial teams. It could be for rewarding participation in a sustainability campaign. So they've got all of these amazing use cases where they're capturing engagement within the company using POAPs. And what's quite fascinating now is that it's not just from one central team who loves POAP or really wants to push blockchain. There's over 150 unique individuals across, I think, 60 offices around the world who have been creating their own POAPs for different use cases, for their own teams, for their kind of business units, etc. And so now they've got this single data source, which is POAP data. That's capturing all this really interesting information. And I'm sure it's really helping them with looking at how they engage employees moving forward, how they build retention, how the employees who are really buying into the Bayer culture, what do they look like, and how do they keep them there?
Mhm. Yeah, and it's amazing to follow your story. I've been, following you for years, and at the beginning it was proof of attendance, and just the thought of someone proving their attendance to something, and how you spin that now, and how you start building use cases and actual products and experiences for companies is amazing to see.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah. You also mentioned a different example, and that has to do with Messi, the footballer,
Yeah.
Messi's hometown, where you
Uh-huh.
created a co-op experience for tourists. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, not to downplay anything on our side, but anytime you're going to throw in someone like Leo Messi into a campaign, it's certainly going to, turn heads and get attention. So, it is quite a cool one. But yeah, Leo Messi grew up in a town called Rosario in Argentina, and they wanted to look at some innovative technology using POAP to create a tourism experience around Leo Messi. So, we're thinking like the school he went to, the football fields that he played at when he was growing up, perhaps the school that he attended, and so they created this kind of tour through the town where you could go and see, Leo Messi's upbringing, and the way that they made it interactive was they had a POAP that was connected that you could claim through tapping your phone on an NFC chip that was connected to, those information boards you see around town with historical information. And so, it's a really fun experience for them. I think it was probably a success instantly, as they got like quite a lot of media coverage in Argentina, and so that certainly drove awareness of their town and helped drive consideration for people to come and visit and spend in the local economy, which is the top line objectives they have. So yeah, it's a really cool one, and the NFC touch points are just another great way that we can distribute and prove engagement. It's one of our unique propositions at POAP is the way that we work really hard to create a simple user experience, but continue to expand and evolve the different ways and the different channels that you can collect.
Mhm. So really a super wide range of possible use cases for POAPs. You mentioned user experience, and I want
Mm.
to go a little bit deeper into that to explain our listeners. And thanks again for tuning in. If you have questions, just drop them in the chat. We'll answer them in the end.
Mhm.
Um, Take a step back and explain how does this work technologically? Why do you need NFTs for that? What's the user experience look like?
Sure. Um, let's start with the user experience, because for anyone who's had some, you know, participation with blockchain or crypto over the last few years, you'll know that it's, in the very early stages, and it can be quite complex to use. It's obviously making progress, but to think about what a POAP experience looks like, it's super simple. You land on a landing page or website. Um, it asks you to put in an address, which could be an email, and then you press collect, and that's it. There's that is a completely standard digital experience that almost everyone in the world would be familiar with doing. So we have abstracted away all of the crypto stuff. Um, and I think that's why we've seen a lot of traction on the enterprise side. And so when you think about like why is there a need for an NFT, it has a number of objectives. As we've talked about earlier, for enterprises, perhaps it's a part of like understanding who is their community, who is interacting with the campaign that they're running. How do you know and how do you split the hairs between fake identities and real identities, which is becoming a growing concern, especially for like online activations. And so I think this is where like NFTs come into play from the enterprise side. For a user, I like to always, use the kind of the metaphor of Facebook memories, or some of those things that your social media platforms today will remind you of that happened in the past. So these are lovely things. I really enjoy when I see these kind of beautiful pictures or friends that I've been connected with for 8 years. But the reality is, these are owned by central organizations. And if something was to happen to these organizations, or I didn't want to use that platform anymore, you can kind of lose those memories and that information. So I think for the collector, it's about capturing these memories. And knowing that you own them, forever, which is really important. Inevitably, though, memories are the kind of things that accrue value over time. So something that you collected, you know, last week has much less significance to what it might have in 2, 3, 5 years time. When you look back and go, oh, how amazing was it that I went to this event, or I was recognized for this at work.
Mhm. And another thing that comes to mind when I think about why are those memories stored on the blockchain, because blockchain is openly accessible. You tie those memories to a user account. You probably know the name and have an email address of that person.
Mhm.
Um, have you seen use cases where companies or communities that used POAP for their internal engagement or internal community then started collaborating with other brands or companies and use that data that they have to enable other experiences for other brands?
Mm. Yeah, it's something we'd love to see more of. This kind of like, benefits of the blockchain is, some of this data is interoperable, which is what you're talking about. It can be used openly across a number of different organizations and communities. It's something that we have seen happen more on just the organization looking back. So, for example, an example that pops to mind, just because people that are, in the Ethereum or crypto space will know very well that DevCon is on next week, which is one of the biggest Ethereum events in the year where people connect. And so, people who collected a part from last year got discounted tickets for this year, and we will see different examples of that where, perhaps if someone's participated in a ETH Global hackathon as a builder or developer, and you want to target those people, then creating an offer or an exclusive discount to people who hold the POAP is the way to recognize those people and tap into other communities. So we've seen that happen, within the Web3 native space. I think there's probably some more work to be done on an enterprise level outside of the Web3 space to see that be leveraged more.
Mhm. Another interesting use case that comes to mind when you tell me that is, um, creators could have an ability to start establishing much more direct fan relationships. For example, yeah, you throw a concert as a singer,
Mm,
you don't get the data of the people attending that's stored with the ticket companies, but you can
mhm.
throw out a QR code on stage. People can scan that, collect the POAP, and then you have a direct relationship and can start interacting with those people.
Yeah.
Have you had use cases for that as well?
Yeah, we have. I think the most known and used artist or creator is Richie Horton. So he's a famous DJ, travels around the world, hosts events and gigs. It's a well known problem that can happen in the music industry where the ticketing companies own the data, and sometimes the actual creators who people are there to see, they don't quite get some of that information, and so they're left kind of wondering, what does my community look like? Because they're not, getting some of this data that exists today. So Richie's been using POAP'S to drop it. His gigs for quite a time now. And what he started to do is some examples of offering discounts or exclusive benefits in his like e-commerce store for people who have attended his events. And so it's again just really helping him start to understand who is his community, who is his fan base, what do they look like, and how do I reward them to get them to keep, coming back to my shows because this is what I love and want to do, not just be streamed on Spotify.
Mhm. And how does that experience for enterprise clients look like if they collected a number of POAPs and now they want to retarget that group? How does that work? How does it look like?
So sorry, Mark. Just if you want to target a group that has collected
Collected,
POAP.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, sure. So today, obviously, there's two levels to look at this, right? If people collect with emails, then it's not really a possibility because we're not just going and putting people's emails addresses open source online. But if they're collecting with Ethereum addresses, certainly that information is there accessible, and so you can target on an on-chain basis. And so I guess that's the challenge today. We do see like quite a percentage of POAP claims, particularly with enterprise clients where, it is just through email only. And so, it does limit in the short term some of that kind of like cross community or cross POAP targeting that you can do.
Yeah. Um, Jai, I also want to look a little bit into the future before
Mm,
we start with a rapid fire round. And by the way, we still have the pop that we will drop for every listener.
yeah.
It's still coming. So be ready with your phones as soon as the QR code pops up. Um, Future outlook. What's
Mm.
your thesis on where enterprise digital collectibles will be in 5 years? And what are some of the upcoming use cases or things you see around the corner that you're most excited about?
Yeah, sure. So I touched on earlier the use of poets for employee engagement, not just for engaging employees, but also to like, try and build some influence internally on using blockchain and, eventually trying to use it externally with consumers. So I guess with some companies that we have seen maybe use this kind of inside out strategy with the low risk testing internally. We'd hope that in 5 years, those strategies and the education internally is leading to execution. And what I'd love to see is, I know you write a lot about this, but we've seen a lot of brands tap into and try different blockchain projects, but generally they're done as like a side project. They're separated from the core product or the core platform. And so what I'd love to see is that, this kind of education has turned execution and has now been really validated by being put into the core product or the core platform. And I think some areas where that might happen first would be looking at things like professional credentials or reputation, because this is where I think blockchain solves a lot of problems that might not be as easy to do with non-blockchain rails today.
Is reputation something you think about at POAP as well?
Certainly,
Mm.
certainly. For each POAP that's collected, it's a proof of engaging or attending in something, and that has real meaning when we focus a lot on the distribution methods and making sure that the data set is really accurate. So we see a place for POAP to be a data parameter within reputation. Verification methods where you can look at is this person or is this identity human or not? Has this person actually been there? Should we then allow them to write a review on their stay at this hotel or on this tourism experience in a city versus today where we see some issues, and I know recently in the US there's been like a bit of a regulation clampdown on like the number of fake reviews and how they kind of police that. So this is where I think some of these kind of credentials on chain and only allowing people to write reviews who have really been there could make a lot of sense.
Mhm. So again, an incredible amount of use cases. Jye, it's great to talk with you about that. Now we're gonna
Mm.
have the big moment. We're gonna drop the POAP QR code. So for everyone who has been watching, here is the reward. You can collect your exclusive POAP for attending
I need
this
to get
power
this one as
launch.
well. There we go. Lovely.
And you can see it right away how this experience looks like. Just scan the code and claim your POAP. Jye, we also got a few questions in from the audience.
Hmm.
The first one is from Rafael Rocha. He asks, showing it here, how do you imagine employees of a public company using POAPs for internal events, whether for training courses, hackathons, and others?
Yeah, certainly. So we see a lot of these use cases today, Raphael, where at internal events, there might be an experience. We really want to make sure that collecting POAPs just not a kind of thing that gets put in the corner, that it's really part of the program or we make an experience. So I think for like internal events, integrating into the program, making it fun to collect, perhaps linking it to some kind of gamification. And then for training courses, yeah, we also see this as well. I think you've got in a workforce, you've got kind of your promotions and your jobs, and they're really significant kind of levels of verification. But then there's a lot of stuff underneath it, like training courses and like things that you might do outside and beyond your role. People that is something that it is really nice. And so that generally looks like some kind of centralized owner of the POAP who verifies that people have completed the action, and then they distribute like a unique claim link to go to the website and collect.
Cool. And then we have another question, and those are more straightforward. I think it's
Yep,
just good that we answer them quickly.
sure.
POAPs are built on Ethereum.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, POAPs built on Ethereum. And then here's an addition from Steven. And what he is asking is, who stores the private keys? How does that user experience work?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, Stephen. I just realized. So to answer your first question, yes, POAPs today are on the Gnosis chain in Ethereum. Um, I would say keep your eyes peeled. There is stuff that is going to be happening very soon that will look at like the network expansion of POAP. So more news coming out soon. With regards to your second question around most wallets, the whole POAPs being non-custodial. Um, yeah, that's a really good question. We generally have seen to this point quite a clear divide. People who are just looking for like a digital experience and using parts for that, where there's like not as much of a focus on the on chain element. Um, and then we see the other side where there is like much more of a focus on the on chain element. And with that. We generally haven't gotten involved with what education they want to do about blockchain because there is a bit of an overlap there with like employee privacy that exists today, right? So, like if you have someone's personal wallet and you connect it to John Smith, who works at the company, sometimes that can create some challenges. So, we generally leave that for the companies to look at.
All right. I think that was it with questions already. Before
Mhm.
we end here, Jay, I want to do a quick firing round with short
Sure.
questions, short answers. The first one, what's your most favorite POAP?
Last year there was a really cool POAP as a part of a tourism activation in Egypt. It kind of found this place in the desert that lined up all of the Great Pyramids, and you could go there and get a picture and get a POAP for proof of attending. So I think that was like a really cool one.
Yeah. What's the most unexpected enterprise use case you've seen?
Uh, I know I've spoken a lot about like internal employee engagement, but just see some really funny ones like, maybe it's like a cornhole competition or some like funny little team bonding exercise, and there'll be like a POAP for that. And it's quite nice to see some of these like real life moments that we can probably all resonate with, being captured with POAPs.
Mhm. What's the biggest misconception about POAPs in the enterprise space or in general?
Yeah, sure. I think we see sometimes POAP being considered as like an all-encompassing digital badge solution for loyalty. And whilst we see there's a real use case for POAPs being incorporated into a loyalty program, I like to think that we're positioning it more as a community engagement tool. So I mentioned World of Women earlier. It's about like connecting the community together, not just a loyalty program where it's kind of one-to-one between the individual and the brand. So I think that's like sometimes a misconception that POAPs can be used for that way, which sometimes falls outside of like the mission that we're on.
Cool. And the last one
Mhm.
prediction about enterprise NFTs that you're willing to bet on.
Yeah. So I'd say for me, it's proof of your career moving on chain will be like the first really big use case of NFTs. So I know this has been streamed on LinkedIn. I could imagine something like that. Today I could go and put I'm the CEO of Google, and all of a sudden I'll get retargeted with all these interesting things, and no one has a lot of ways to verify the things that I put on there. So I see that being like a significant thing that will come through, and I'd be willing to put a bet on because it links to important factors about what we spend a lot of our time on and the money we earn. So it's quite significant to verify what's real and what's not.
Mhm. Thanks, Jay. Before we close, just a last question here from Dimitro that came in.
Yeah.
Do you have any plans to eventually use POAPs for airdrop distribution to add some value to POAPs?
Yeah, so I don't think I have an opinion or anything to share. Anything's obviously possible in the future, so I wouldn't rule things out one way or another. But for now, the focus is on like capturing memories and moments and not linking POAP'S to any form of like financial utility.
Mhm. All right. Jay, thanks a lot for coming to the show. Where can
Mhm.
people find more about you, about POAP?
Yeah, so our website poap.xyz has a lot of information on what we offer, what the solution is, some case studies as well, of course. Another great one to look at is POAP Studio. For enterprise clients, they do a lot of the fantastic go-to-market and work with our enterprise clients. So I'd have a look at them on LinkedIn. And yeah, for me personally, I think feel free to message me on LinkedIn, Twitter. I'm kind of on all the channels. That's one thing you need to do in crypto, is be kind of everywhere online. So I've gotten used to that. But yeah, feel free to reach out.
Exactly. Jai, thanks a lot for coming to the show, for
No worries.
explaining us POAP. It was a pleasure to have you here. Everyone who tuned in, thanks for joining. We'll see you next week. And that's it. I wish you all the best and talk soon.
Sweet. Yeah. Have a nice evening.